Hello, everyone, and welcome to the preseason coverage interview that I'm doing here with Sebastian Park from Clutch Gaming. We're filming this, if you're watching the VOD, over on the U.GG Caffeine channel, and of course, this coverage is sponsored by Alienware, like so many things that I do this year. How's it going, Sebastian?
Good, man. Your set is so much nicer than it was last year.
Yeah, this is not my set, to be clear. I don't want people to have this expectation because a lot of content will still be done in my living room, probably.
Oh, you mean the Travis Gafford studio?
Yes. One and the same. One and the same. How are things going over at Clutch?
Oh, it's going well, man. We're ramping through training camp. It's been a couple months since I've seen you, and so we finished our roster. We changed up our facility structure, changed up our staff. Started training camp like a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And we got like another 10 days until the start of the season.
Good. Well, I'm glad that we addressed everything, and that's the interview. So it was great to have you come in. No, so let's go line by line there. You said that you changed up your training facility or your facility. Like, what's going on there?
Oh yeah, so we moved away from the team house model that I've never been a huge fan of, honestly. I mean, the context, which is sort of interesting, is that team houses were originally done to just save money, right? Like back in the day, we couldn't afford places to live, so you just put 10 people in the same house, so you can live off $500 a month.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case for the most part. And so what we did was we moved into a office space specifically for practice. So like there's a scrim room, and then there are co-working spaces for the rest of our staff to be in the same location. And then we also brought our academy team into the same area. On top of that, then on the outside, we got housing for people who wanted it, but we also gave the option that I think 3 or 4 of our players took to go find their own housing, like be an independent person and just commute and show up to the office on time for work.
I know that it sounds like several of the teams are doing this now, because I know Cloud9, TSM, obviously Team Liquid, CLG, now you guys, and Golden Guardians. So I think that's actually the majority of the LCS now are doing this. It's kind of interesting to see that movement. Yeah,
the team house model is such a disaster most of the time. I mean, you know this because you've just been around forever.
Yeah.
But like, there's a hypothesis that suggests that people hate each other in Summer Split because they have to live together and breathe down each other's throats for like 6 months. So that's sort of like hopefully the solves for that. More to the point, we really want to move the direction in that more professional direction, right? And so it's similar to what's happening with your studio. It's sort of important for us to like
not my studio.
keep going one step at a time.
The Clutch offices, the Clutch training facility, how do you think that will compare to some of the other ones that have been lifted up into as a big sign of success for an organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we're really hypothesis testing still, right? So we're currently using. We've looked at a lot of different offices, and we're just testing out different styles. There's a lot of research on open offices that we're looking into. We're currently in Century City, right? Okay. And so that's cool, but is that the ideal location for it? We're not going to call ourselves the WTF or anything like that anytime soon, if only because we want to try out a bunch of more things over the course of the next year or 2.
Sure. So this isn't a conference room in a WeWork somewhere?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
But maybe.
But maybe.
Okay.
But maybe.
Well, good to know that you'll be trying a variety of different things. Let's see. So then you also talked about staffing changes. What happened on the staffing side?
On the staffing side, we promoted Brendan McGee. He was our academy head coach last year. He did a really good job. Really smart guy, really hardworking. We brought him up to being the LCS head coach. We brought back Nasser Empire, who was a scout last year. He's now our head scout and does a lot of our scouting analysis there. And then we built the staff around them. So we brought in a new academy coach from Dallas, and then started interviewing a lot of different people up and down, and found a pretty decent staff to build around Brendan and see how he does with our team.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Now on the roster side, feels like everything is different.
Lira is the same, and technically we've returned 4 of the 10 players from last year.
But on the LCS side,
right?
What happened there? Maybe you can go lane by lane and kind of break down why this all happened.
Let's see. Let's think about this. So let's go backwards from academy. So at year ends, right?
Yeah.
And we make Gauntlet. Making Gauntlet was sort of both a blessing and a curse. The curse part was it slowed down how fast we could get moving on to next year. The blessing was that we did really well. We had a really solid month of practice. We saw a lot of what Brodin could do. He was the head coach during the time. He was really pushing our guys forward. We didn't have the result we wanted. We played up against Echo Fox. We basically never beat Huni. And it didn't work out in that sense. But 2 days later, we immediately started. Nasser and Brodin spearheaded a in-house style scrimmage / tryout. And so basically 2 days after we lost the gauntlet, so on that Monday, we were already
so this is
out.
like September, I think.
This is September, yeah.
In September, which is what, like 4 or 5 months ago, you guys were already trying people out.
Yeah, so we were looking and trying people out. We were bringing back our old guys to practice and scrim against the new guys. We were in talks with guys like for Moon, for example. We were like, hey man, we definitely want you with our organization. That said, if you find another offer you find better, feel free to go move on. We also had we had Billy Gaming from China come over to do a show match against some of our guys in Houston. Meanwhile, we were also like finding people on the ladder, inviting people to come and practice against us, preferably in secret. We've asked everyone to keep it on the down low for the most part, mostly because we just didn't want people to know that we're looking as deeply when other teams are taking vacations.
Sure.
So we did that. We built out our academy team a little bit. We had better understanding of what that was going to look like, and then we turned back to the LCS.
Really quickly, what are your goals for the academy this year? Not necessarily like in terms of placement, but I mean, like, I feel like last year every team was trying to figure out what they really wanted academy to be. And so what was it that you guys are looking for out of your academy team this year?
Yeah, so I mean, so jumping a little bit forward, like we got Piglet and Vulcan out of our academy into the LCS. If we can get one person from our academy team to the LCS every year.
Yeah. I don't know if Piglet counts, by the way. Winning a world championship.
Hey, man, he became NA.
It's not like, yes, he did become NA, but like being like, so, yes, he promoted out of academy into the LCS. Congratulations.
You take everyone you can get, man.
Yeah.
No, I mean, so Vulcan being the best example, right? We took him third in last year's draft with the pick we got from Golden Guardians. He played super well in our academy team. He's our LCS starter now. We're really happy for Phil. We think he's going to do super well. If we can generate even one guy every year, I think that's an amazing success for our academy team.
Yeah.
And so to that point, this year we're very much full NA down there. So we have Rodolph, who's a Canadian guy who was at Scouting Grounds the previous year in 2017. We had Major Danger, who is by all accounts, a ladder god. We brought back Sun Josh Cook, who went at ZX, showed a lot of progress last year. We wanted to see a couple more years with him, so we brought him back. And then on the bot lane, Cody's son was available, so we talked to Cody, and Cody said, sure, we'll come by. And then he said he wanted to play with Papa Chow. So we hit up Papa Chow, and he said, yeah, sure, well, I'm at Columbia right now, but I'll come back out here to LA as well. So
nice.
That's sort of how that turned out.
Leaving Columbia for Academy.
Yeah, so yes. We'll see.
Okay, so now we've got Academy. But you were able to lock that in, it sounds like, relatively early, with the exception of a couple of folks that you grabbed maybe kind of later on.
Yeah.
Like Cody, for instance.
Cody, for example. I mean, the big thing about that was that even if you start in September, you can only just do research.
Right.
So we spent September through October into the later parts of November, even into December, just like doing a lot of research and looking up a lot of guys. Everyone from Broken Blade. So we looked up a lot of guys out in Korea and China. Some people in Southeast Asia that we really liked as well. South America was an interesting region. We just split up the world and just like went through everyone. Sure. But the problem was that we didn't know who'd be available, right? So we just weren't sure, right? There were a lot of people on our list who we didn't think would be available. Like we didn't think Huni would be available. We were pretty sure he was already at that point in September in like extension talks. It sounded like it was a done deal with Echo Fox. On the flip side, we had no idea. We knew that if we were to switch up our style, we'd need to make changes to our different lanes. But we really liked a lot of our guys. And so Apollo and Haku in our bottom lane, and Solo in our top lane, we knew those guys were great pieces with different types of organizations and different types of teams. So we can like break out like, hey, if we go more X-centric or like bot lane-centric, do we have to like change our top, or do we keep Solo, or do we go the opposite direction when we switch up our top and keep the bot lane? And then talk to Fabian Febevin, in exit interviews and asked, hey man, if you want to come back to NA, please come back. We'd love to have you here. Definitely with us and with nobody else.
Right.
But if you want to go to Europe, like we'll help facilitate that. And so the first domino to fall really was we got a lot of interest from a lot of different teams around Vevivin. But the team that he wanted to play for and the team that really jumped out to him was the Misfits roster. And so when Ben reached out and said, hey, we really want Fabian, can we talk to him? I said, sure, of course you can. They talked. He almost joined them last year. So like he was choosing between them and us.
Right.
And so when he wanted to go to Misfits, it seemed like a no-brainer to like make that work for him. So he's off to Europe. Now we have a gap in the mid lane. How do we rebuild the roster?
Yeah. So you had your work cut out for you because really you had so many positions that were open. I don't know if you guys are the team that had the biggest turnover on the LCS roster, but I imagine you must be, if not tied.
No, Echo Fox did 100%.
Good point.
Right? Like
sorry.
Yeah. I know half of those guys actually on that roster,
yeah.
right?
And so maybe we can talk about that. Like, how did this end up happening? Sneaky described it to me in an interview. He's like, yeah, Clutch and Echo Fox just like both almost decided to swap their rosters and decide like, let's just do it this way. So I mean,
who wins, right?
Yeah.
I think I can go position by position. On the support side, we had some really interesting offers, right? So both for Haku and for Vulcan, people were offering us like hundreds of thousands of dollars for both of those guys. It was sort of a strange situation.
You say that as if they weren't worth the hundreds of thousands.
No, strange in the sense that like obviously like Nick is like Hakuo is like pretty famous and has a lot of history to it. We were really surprised to see Vulcan get that much fanfare as well. He was spending his 2 months in Korea like becoming like a top 10 challenger player, so maybe that's part of it. But we knew that we were in a good shape with them either or.
Yeah. Same
thing with Apollo and Piglet, right? We knew either or we'd be fine. Just different styles of play, right? And so what ends up happening is the first domino to fall after that was we're trying to decide, do we go import mid or import top, right? And there's a strong argument to go import mid because we have Solo. Colin, by all our accounts, is a pretty good and getting better top laner who last year was his first real year there. But then Huni became available like really quickly. Like I don't know if you're keeping up at the time, but like he went from basically having signed to like being like, oh, I'm a free agent again, like overnight.
Right.
And then Jensen swapped from Cloud9 to TL, and we're like, well, crap. That actually was like a large onus then to be like, oh, we gotta go in the Huni direction. And I think that's something that like I give our ownership a lot of credit for. When we saw Team Liquid make the upgrade, right, to a Jensen-like player in the mid lane, and then also go get Core JJ, we're like, well, if our goal is to win the LCS, we can't be complacent at all. We can't be satisfied with having playoffs. We have to take a lot of risk. And so we went through our like flow chart of different roster iterations, like what's the riskiest and like best possible roster we can come up with. Immediately we're like, we probably have to run Piglet. Like Piglet's definitely the highest bear guy we have, right? Who else is like insanely good and could be better? Like there's no one with a higher ceiling than Lira, right? Like Lira was killed it like for multiple years before having a slight down year. We're like, well, that seems okay. So we got two. Piglet's played with Vulcan before. Let's bring him back. Like, what's the best type of top laner for this? Well, you have guys like Someday who are far more stable, and then you have guys like Huni who can just straight up beat everyone in the world.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, let's go with Huni. Like, what's he up to? Bring him through. And then in the mid lane, it was just a question of, do you go with someone who's more established and has a longer track record, so you're like Huhi's, your Po Belters of the world, or do you go with someone who's basically a rookie who has more volatility? And our model suggested that even with a roster that has like all the other pieces we did, we wanted someone who could grow such that we can have the ability to become a better team than like a Team Liquid. And so we got DeMonte, we're really happy with Tanner, and that's how that roster came together.
Yeah.
Basically in that order.
You mentioned that you really wanted to take a lot of risks this year. Why follow that format rather than go with consistency, like more consistent players?
I just think talent wins out. I think it's true across most esports and most sports. Being consistent is awesome, but if you're consistently mediocre, you just consistently lose,
sure.
Right? And I think there are great consistent players at a lot of positions, but realistically, if you have a team in your league that's like basically the equivalent of the Warriors, right? Like someone who has like all-stars or superstars at multiple positions, like you're just not going to win just try and play them straight up, right? You're going to need to bring people to the table who can match up with them in lane and like do well. And that's something that, like, Piglet, for example, is a great example of someone who's always been able to match up well against double lift, right?
Right.
You have guys like Huni, who I don't think he ever loses lane, period, right? And so we're really confident, like, hey, here's a group of people who on any day can be any team in the world. Like, not just North America, but like you match them up against G2 or Fnatic, you match them up against any team in Korea, there are days where we'll just win. And so that to us is exactly what we want to go for, and then really trusting our coaching staff to bring these guys together and make sure we're always in that like top quartile of things. But you miss every shot you don't take, so you gotta have a group of people who are like really happy about taking shots.
Now you referenced the Warriors in terms of just like talent winning out. Admittedly, I don't follow the NBA nearly as much as you do, or really anybody who watches the NBA. But I do feel like the Warriors are consistently good, right? They're like they have that high skill cap, but they also show a good deal of consistency, which is why we see them time and time again do so well.
I mean, their consistency is really driven by the fact that they're like 3 of their star players can have off days,
yeah,
and they still have a superstar who can pop off, right? The Rockets, as with all our injuries right now, we have one guy who really pops off, and he's been doing it consistently over the last 2 months, but that's just like a different style. And there's more risk in that because you're really relying on one person to consistently carry you through, right? Last year for us, that was Febvin, right? Like our style of play was consistently like, hey, is Fabian having a good day? And if Fabian's having a good day, we did well. And if Fabian's having an average day, there were times where we weren't doing well. And it was completely built around whether Febvin was going to pop off. This year, anyone can pop off, right? Like Lira can pop off, like Huni can pop off, Demonte can pop off, Vulcan can pop off, Piglet can pop off.
Sure.
And so it's a different type of consistency, right? It's like if someone's having if the patch doesn't fit the ADC, the patch doesn't fit our top laner, we still have someone who can play carries in the mid lane and vice versa.
You mentioned just having these like really high skill caps, and there was a decision for you to keep Lira around.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember 2017 Lira, like, people would talk about how he was best in class and all this. Certainly, the public opinion has changed on him after 2018. What is Clutch doing to try to ensure that you get 2017 Lira rather than 2018 Lira?
Mostly it's around just having him talk more. Lira is widely regarded by a lot of people, both in North America and Korea, as being one of the smartest players in the game. He consistently is able to read his opponents. He understands. He watches a ton of film. Like, that's all he does at night is just watch other junglers do what they do. And so he sees things before they happen. And so for the biggest thing for us is making sure he's comfortable with Huni, making sure he's comfortable with Demonte, to be like, hey, and comfortable with Piglet and our AD and our support player. And really, we think that having 2 additional Koreans, both of whom could speak English very well, seems like a great way to like get him into the comfort zone, to talk through with his different laners about what's happening. There are some great comms from last year where he sees different types of cheese moves that are happening on the map without any vision there. Because he's just like, this is sort of a strange thing in terms of he would see the position of the mid laner, see the position of the top laner, and from those 2 positionings infer where their jungler must be. And that's really high level play that doesn't get exploited enough if you're not constantly communicating. And so for Taeyu, for Lira, 2017 Lira was the super shot caller. He would be like telling like Apollo and Hakuo and Seraph and Niski where to be and how to be where. He was literally the coach and player, right? This year we're just making sure, and Brendan does a great job at this. He's someone who is constantly trying to make sure everyone's included in the conversation. Then, Lira, what are you seeing? What are you seeing here? What are you seeing there? How are you seeing the different movements here? How can we make sure that we're maximizing your read? Yeah. And so that's what we're trying to see. He also told me that he spent a lot of time in Korea just playing dumb champions, right? He was like, you've solo queued North America for a little bit too long. You go back to Korea, you just play Lee Sin for like 100 games.
Right. Now, let's take a step back from the roster and talk about the team and the organization in 2019. So 2018, great year for Clutch.
Fine year.
I mean, I've heard you made it to, even Miami, your very first split, you were in the top 4 and competing there. So I feel like pretty good. I will say though that you outperformed some of the other new teams that came in, but also you have like 100 Thieves who just kind of hit it out of the park, as it were.
100%, yeah.
And so what is Clutch looking to do this year to make sure that you guys are performing at a higher level as an organization?
Yeah, I think there are 3 things we focus on right now. One is on our coaching and support staff, just being more vocal and communicative to everyone, not just the players, but also to like everyone at every level. That means like Brendan, for example, like our previous coaching staff wasn't very publicly driven. They like didn't have things to say to anyone. Brendan's look, man, you just gotta talk to people and let them know what we're trying to do. And there's a bit of just telling you or telling anyone like, hey, our staff is working on this is super valuable, because it also reinforces to players like, hey, like if you like Brendan did a great interview recently where it's like, look, Piglet is incredibly underrated right now because people just don't have a strong recency bias. So in their minds, Lost is maybe the best ADC in the world right now, but we haven't seen him, and we've seen him practice, and we have more information available. And him saying that out loud to people is valuable, because it really helps our team gel together. And so part of that is just be more communicative to everyone on every level. The other parts are just constantly trying to test things. We did a lot of testing in terms of our like metrics last year and our systems and whatnot. We just want to do more of that with like people too as well, right? Just try out different types of food, right? like literally, don't only cook Korean food every day. And this is something that like a lot of teams struggle with. It's like, hey, do we cook Korean food? Do we order takeout? Do we eat at steakhouses? Just try to like mix up the cuisine, see if that makes people happier. Stuff like that.
How about on the brand side? Because I feel like, again, looking at 100 Thieves, they've done all this stuff. They made a really big commitment to apparel and content and all that kind of thing. So where is Clutch looking to amp up on the brand side?
Yeah, I mean, we're far behind where 100 Thieves was last year. And I give a lot of credit to Nate Shy. He just gets it. He gets it in ways that, honestly, I don't, right? Like, there are things I do get. Like, I understand data analysis pretty well. I understand, like, how you're dressed.
Do you?
No, I've talked to Rachel and Brianne a lot,
Okay,
so, like,
yeah.
they've been teaching me what to say to you to sound impressive.
Good.
But, no, we're basically come to a conclusion that, hey, man, we're probably not going to be as, like, snappy tastemakers as everyone else. But what we will do is we're totally willing to try everything and fail. And so there are things that one of our guys did, for example, Hunter Segesta, who's with us on the Rocket side as well. He was like, what'd be really cool? Let's just call our guys at the NBA and make some like Rockets jerseys for our guys and see how that does, right? And they loved it. We're trying stuff around. You'll start seeing in week 1. We're doing more of a NBA, NFL style press conference for Brendan, where he's obligated to talk after every win and loss about what the hell happened and see how he does. Maybe he becomes Sean McVay, maybe he doesn't, right? That's a football reference.
Yeah, I have no
so
idea.
the LA Rams, it's the home team.
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
They're in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, when I fly into LA, there's a giant hole in the ground right now.
That's the stadium.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. Gotcha.
They're a good team. In any case, so there's that bit. We're also open to ideas. There's been people on our subreddit as well as on our Twitter feeds and our Discord who've been just throwing out ideas of things they want to do. Like, hey, they want a picture of Huni if he had any with a basketball in China. Okay. And so we're like, hey, Huni, do you have any pictures of yourself with a basketball when you're a child?
Yeah, sure.
And so and they did, and so we found a picture of Huni with a basketball as a child, and it's on our Weibo in China right now. Stuff like that. Like we're really open, and we're just trying to better crowdsource how to create things that people want.
Yeah. Have you thought about staffing up on the marketing or community side at all?
Oh, we have. So we made additional hires on both. So we have a couple new videographers on staff, or one videographer, one photographer. We brought in a new social media coordinator, Sandra. She started January 2nd. She's been doing a great job, and she's has a lot of great ideas. We've been hiring a lot for those positions for a while. Honestly, we were on the social media coordinator side. We were interviewing for months. It's just you know how hard it is. You gotta find a good person and takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, social media and esports, I think, is one of the most sought after positions, or rather, teams and companies and organizations are constantly looking for social media people here.
It's not just that, man. I think it's legitimately harder than finding an ADC in North America. Right?
Yeah, maybe.
Like it's like there just aren't. There are a lot of people who could probably do it, but if you're thrust into the like spotlight of having to do it at a large scale immediately, it takes a special kind of person. We also have an interview style that is a little bit more not repressive, but more harder to grep. Meaning that like you have to like basically pass like 7 interviews, and then like reference checks, and then come on site, and then do more stuff.
Gotcha.
And it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So
okay, so you're staffing up on that side. What about like a high-level marketing position or anything like that? Because it sounds like you've got people that are handling a lot of the execution stuff on the video side and on the social media side. But I'm generally thinking like if Clutch wants to compete in this arena, not just on the competitive side, but also on the brand side, having somebody, as you said yourself, like this isn't your core competency. You're more on like the analytical side. So are you thinking about hiring anybody to like manage literally just like Clutch Gaming brand issues?
yeah, so we're interviewing, and we have people within the Rocket. So the weird thing about Clutch, right, is that our merchandise team, for example, is all sourced in-house, and so everything we do on the merchandise side is based in large part with the Rocket's identity, because we use the same merch people, the same merchandise executives, the same like merch distribution.
Gotcha.
Right? There are pros and cons, right? One pro that we have is that it makes it really easy for us to like spin up things that are sports related, right? But we're not going to do streetwear, right? Like that's the problem, or if that is a problem, right? We're not. We're pretty big into techwear, so we've been talking with a bunch of people about our techwear push, but streetwear, it was just not something that it's in our capabilities to do.
Right.
We don't think we need to do it though. It's like, you don't have to copy every other team. You just have to just try out different things. And I think that's the big push we're doing this year. Last year, we tried out things, but not at the frequency we wanted to. We tried out doing like the docu-series everyone does, right? And it was interesting footage, but it just wasn't getting the type of excitement that we wanted to see. And so we're like, okay, let's take those resources and let's like try out 17 different things.
Gotcha.
And so we've filmed a lot of it actually already. So we had like multiple days of like asset and media days over the past month. And so we have a lot of footage that we're working through, and we're hoping to show people like in a few days.
What about the relationship with the league and with Riot right now? Because this is an interesting conversation I had with some of the owners yesterday, and with Chopper when he came into the office, or
Nice.
sorry, came into the studio.
This studio or the other studio?
This studio.
Okay.
We were discussing the ownership meeting that happened in December, where the owners came in and talked to Riot. Both Nadeshot and Chopper admitted that there was a little bit of frustration from some of the owners and the franchisees towards Riot at the start of that meeting, and there was some conversations happening there. I'm kind of curious how you feel about the LCS and sort of the broader relationship between your organization and the league itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like, because everyone who's in the room is in the room because they truly believed in the vision and still believe in the vision of the LCS. It's interesting from the perspective of course you're frustrated, right? It's because you want everything to be always the best always, right? That's the standard, and that's the expectation everyone has. Chopper and Greeley and those guys have it for themselves, and we have it for them. Personally, it's one of those things like, we're here to provide as much help as possible. And so whenever Greeley we're even proactive with their help, when they're talking to sponsors, when they're talking to different strategic items, we send over like white papers to them, being like, hey, here's our like 13 points of research that we've done prior in this space. Have a look, let us know if you have any questions. That's our relationship, right? We're here to help. We're here to help the league. The league is here to help us. And the frustration, I think, is palpable in part because there is a spread between how people are approaching things. But as long as people are consistent in their approach and they're more process driven, I'm personally not as fussed as everyone else, right? Like, I know there's a difference between being goal driven and process driven. Goal driven wise, for sure, like there are goals that we'd prefer to hit higher, but what we affect is process, and as long as the process is being done properly, the results will happen eventually.
Yeah. Do you feel like Riot did enough for the LCS and the teams in 2018?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't know what enough looks like, right? Like in a certain extent, and you and I don't have kids, but like I heard this as an analogy, so I'm just going to go with it. Ask Nick Allen; he probably knows.
Okay.
Like I have no idea. Oh, I also ask Hunter. Ask like half the league at this point
Right.
about their kids, but we're getting old. The thinking around is that apparently there's never enough you can just do for your kids.
Sure.
Right? Like there's always more you can do for them and more you can help them out. And some people can't because they're working 2 jobs and they're trying to do it. And some people like have like the luxury to help out and be around more often. And that's like the spread. And so in that sense, like was Riot working pretty hard? Oh, 100%, right? Like the brand team, I thought their execution at the different events was pretty solid. Like I thought the event at in Golden State with the tailgate
Oakland,
was a totally fun, like really well done event. Could they have done more? Yeah, I'm sure they could have. Right, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have the expectation.
So I guess the difference between your analogy, though, is that your kids can't leave you after 2 years, which is the rumor that I've heard is that like the teams are able to exit at the end of 2019 if they're unhappy, or they can sell their organization.
That'd be pretty hilarious, though, right? Like if like kids just leave.
Yes, yes, it would be. It would not be hilarious though if some of the teams started leaving the LCS, and so that's
the fundamentals haven't changed. The LCS is still the best league in the world, right? Like that's the thing that like is both like incredibly satisfying and sad to I think a lot of people, right? Like if the expectations based on being the best in the world, like you start to like fall off a little bit here and there. I mean, it's a little bit like should the U.S. government ever shut down? The answer is no, right? Like we should never have a shutdown in this country. Yeah. It's a great economy. It's a good country.
Moving into a political arena.
No, but I'm just saying, like in as an aside, like should people want to shut down the LCS? No, right? Like if the idea is that people should leave en masse to like shut down the LCS, that's just dumb. Like the numbers doubled, right?
I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but at a certain point in time, all the franchisees have to decide like, okay, is this make sense from a value perspective? Whether that value is sponsorship or partnership related, or broader brand related or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, the general audience and the public doesn't really know like what the expectations were from the LCS teams going into 2018 and 2019. But if at a certain point in time, like the sports executives and the VCs are deciding like, hey, this doesn't make sense anymore, then people are gonna start wanting to leave or swap out or sell their organization.
For sure, yeah. It's just weird, right? Because if you believe in esports, there's what other bet would you make, right? Like I'm being serious, right? Like if there's this separate conversation, which is, hey, do you get into this for the wrong reasons and you don't believe in esports? But if you like Daryl Morey, for example, and I both really believe in esports, right? Like this is what we've been doing for the last few years. We really think that long term, maybe not in the next like 12 months, but in the next 5, 10, 20 years, esports is a top 3 sport alongside soccer and basketball, right? And they should definitely be in the Olympics soon. And you should be there too with the Olympics, right? Like, if that's the case, show me something that's better to do than League of Legends.
Well, so we're both really good friends with Noah Winston.
Right.
At least I consider him my really good friend. I don't know what Noah
I like
would say
Noah.
about me.
I don't know if he likes me.
But Noah, no, that's how I feel as well.
Right.
But I think Noah would tell you Overwatch League is a better option. Now, I might disagree, but like that would be his answer to your question.
Right, but then what are your metrics, right? So like our metrics were always viewership, right? Like how many people or fans are around? How long have you been around? Are you still updating the game? And are you growing? By all accounts, League of Legends is still growing, right? Like we expect, and I think one of the hot takes we had was like, hey, is 2018 the year where viewership finally goes flat for the LCS? Like we've lost a bunch of teams that people liked. Like there's a lot of changes. We don't have Immortals anymore. TSM doesn't look as good as they're going to be in the previous years. And the answer was no. Like viewership grew last year. It's set to grow again this year. And so if your judgment, and I think this is a judgment of a lot of teams, is hey, like we just want to be in a place where we'll figure it out. This is a good place to be. Now granted, again, I also don't disagree with some people who think that all this is crazy, right? Like there are reasons to be bearish. Like if esports is counter-cyclical, like movies and film, that means that if the economy does poor, that we as a industry will do better. Because people will stop going on their like destination weddings and start watching more esports. I truly believe esports is counter-cyclical. But if you don't believe that, well, and you think a recession is coming, how do you feel about
Yeah.
where you are right now, right? Like, I think people will watch more esports when we're in a recession. But if you disagree with me fundamentally, then what are you doing?
Well,
right?
okay, so even setting aside the viewership though, like what are the goals or what would you like to see out of the LCS this year? I mean, perhaps some of that is growth. I'm sure you'd love to see growth, but like, what other areas would you like to see the LCS improve on?
Right, but the thing is, just for context, like
Yeah.
number one is like up here, and number two is right here.
Sure.
So like viewership growth is the biggest and be on end all in my mind, right? And part of that is because like I have faith that there's smart enough people, knock on wood, in the space to figure out what to do with that viewership. But if you lose this, if you're here on viewership when you need to be here, there's no solve for that.
Sure.
Right?
But stepping aside or setting aside viewership, what do you think LCS needs to accomplish in 2019? Like, what would Clutch like to see from LCS?
Sure. I think that the two big ones are one, a bifurcation of content types, and that's way too stupid of a word. So basically, we want to see a separation in terms of the competitive product, which has always been solid, which is like the actual games you see, and more content around the stars and people involved in the space. I think that content does super well. Riot's clearly moving in that direction. The NBA does an amazing job. Reportedly, Major League Baseball does an awful job at that, right? We want to be more like the NBA than like Major League Baseball when it comes to like setting up and telling the stories of our stars. People know where James Harden came from, where he went to college, what he's doing, and how he's doing it, and the context of what he's doing in the greater world of the NBA. We don't have quite that yet. Part of it was because there was a lot of focus on one. Let's try to do both at the same time. The second one, obviously, is interesting partnerships. And I don't mean necessarily partnerships on just like the fiscal element, because like that's awesome, but that doesn't really matter to fans as much. I mean like interesting partnerships from like interesting engagements, interesting cool things we can do, things that like will really engage and improve the value of the fan space, right? I've always wondered like why the press room is so nice at the Riot Studios. Like it'd be really cool if there was like a fan winning ticket who gets like upgraded into sitting next to you.
Press room is not that nice. I will dispute that. I
No.
mean, there are elements of it that are
That
nice.
front bit where you and Brodin
Yes,
sit.
there's one room that is in
like-
particular nice. The interview room. There's a reason I do my interviews outside, but
Right. But my point though is like that's like an interesting one. Like it'd be cool to get that room sponsored, and then
Yeah.
like part of that sponsorship with Alienware, for example, with you is that you upgrade 2 fan tickets to come sit upstairs with you and watch the LCS.
yeah. I mean, maybe. I think they'd be disappointed at like what that process is actually like. It's usually me yelling at Brodin because he's not editing yet. But
That does happen a lot.
yes, exactly. But I see. So you would like to see partnerships that bring value to the LCS and expanded value.
Right, and then on top, look, like, does everyone like money? Yeah, 100%. But
Yeah.
the question is like, can we build a sustainable base, and can we like really push forward in it? And that I think is hard to grab.
The first bit you mentioned, though, not just the partnerships, but also telling the stories of the players and helping to sort of build stars out of these guys. Don't you feel like a lot of that onus falls on the teams as well?
Oh, 100%. And that's sort of back to the initial analogy about like that's why it's called a partnership and not like necessarily like a, hey, we work for you.
Sure.
Right? It's like, yeah, that's 100% on us as well, right? Like, but it's a question of how do you feature those stories. The frame of reference in traditional sports has been team brings it up, it gets picked up by mainstream. Mainstream then propagates it to the press. Press then takes it to Twitter, and then everyone knows what's happening here.
Sure.
And so one of the things for us, for example, is that we really do think Vulcan's going to be rookie of the split. It's a hard battle because he's a support player. Support players almost never win rookie of the split because it's usually one of the carry positions that wins rookie of the split. We really think he's that good, and we think that like he's going to beat up on Broken Blade, who is like probably his main competition for rookie of the split. That's a much more interesting story if the Riot Analytics guys pull that data and suggest it, right? Because from us, frankly speaking, I might be a little biased, just like a tad.
Yeah.
And so like it's sort of a harder story to tell. Whereas like if Riot wants to really show the rookie of the split race, they can do it one game at a time, like maybe like do like the bar things or like, oh, like Broken Blade inted, so he goes down a little bit. And, oh, Vulcan like got a really sick kill, he goes up a little bit.
Yeah.
And never the other direction.
there was a question in chat that I just missed, but I was discussing a little bit about contracts, and it kind of reminded me. I haven't had a chance to bring this up with some of the other folks, but do you feel like the salary costs in North America went up this year? The salary spent from the teams?
Oh, so I actually think that I think it's interesting. I think I mentioned this on your show last time, actually, right? I think the middle class is disappearing in esports right now. And I think that might be a function of the player association, might be a function of a couple other things. But basically, the guys at the top end are almost certainly making more money this year than they did last year.
So you mentioned the Players Association. How would the Players Association be involved in that?
Oh, sure. So one of the interesting things here is that if you have collective bargaining and if you have like a salary cap or if you have max contract sizes, what then that ends up doing is actually like takes the money that's like allocated to the players, because we have a player allocation, and spreads it across the stars all the way down to the rookies. We don't have that right now, and so but everyone still has a budget, right? And so what ends up happening is that you see a lot more spend on the top end guys, and then unless your team liquid, then you just spend that much for all 5 guys. But like you see a lot more spend there, and a lot more spend towards the towards the bottom end of the like graph, but not a lot of spend in between.
Yeah.
And that is, it's not a problem, right? Like it's not a problem from the perspective of are any like economic trends problems. It's just a thing, and it's a question of whether or not you want that thing to be the case. I personally, on like a personal, like separate from Clutch, think that there's a lot of value in having a very strong middle class. Obviously, people in the middle class in esports still make a lot of money, so it's not like they certainly make more than the two of us, or maybe not you anymore. I mean, I hear Alienware's doing really well, but like last year version of you. But like having a middle class that like can go get a really nice apartment and like live a separate life, that's appears to be going away. So on the whole, I think the money that was spent went up, but I think the median salary has gone down.
Right. So I do want to take some questions from chat if people want to start popping up here before we wind down stuff. But generally speaking, maybe while people are thinking about questions to ask, I can just ask you, what are your expectations for Clutch competitively this year? Where are you aiming for the organization?
So I think we want to go from last time you asked me this question, I thought we were going to finish somewhere between 3 and 7, right? This time I think we're somewhere between 1 and 6. Is our honest answer?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've moved up the range. Yeah, because it does feel like Clutch is a team that
some people might peg us up between 1 and 10.
Yeah.
Right, but as long as there's 1 in the outcomes, I think we're fine. Right, like.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, we're doing so much better in scrims this year. I don't know if that matters.
See, every person I talk to says they are killing it in scrims.
Oh, and no, dude. I told you last year we were getting crushed last year.
Well, no, but like since the start of this year.
Right.
And that must mean that everybody is just consistently scrimming their academy team or something.
Right,
I do not understand how all 10 teams could be killing in scrims.
There's no way all 10. Maybe they're just doing really well against each other. It might be one of those like circle things where you have like selective memory.
Okay, Chris Whiteley here says, will Clutch be looking for marketing interns in 2019? I'd love to apply.
Yes, you can definitely apply. I think jobs at clutchlcs.com.
LCS. Okay.
Clutchlcs.com.
Or just tweet at Sebastian.
Or just tweet at me, I guess, right? We had a couple of awesome interns last year. One of them was Hayden Rome. He killed it. Is back in school now, and we're really excited to see where he goes from there. We thought he did super well. A couple others were on our engineering side. Hayden was a marketing intern. He did super well. One of our other interns converted into full-time recently, and he's awesome. And so we're really excited about that. So we've had at least some type of success in that sense. And then we had another intern on the marketing side convert full-time as well.
Gotcha.
So
earlier in chat, Joe had asked, does Clutch have any rivals?
That's a great question. Probably Echo Fox.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like that's probably how it's going to
hopefully it's a one-sided rivalry. Like, I would be very sad if we dropped a single game to them ever again.
Ever
again, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard when you swap 3 players one way and 2 players the other way, and you're not a rival in a sense.
Yeah.
Echo Fox had our number last year for sure, by the way. Like, we were, I think, like 1-5 against Echo Fox over the course of, or like 1-8 over the course of like 1-10 maybe. It was really bad.
Sure.
Like, we won like one game and we lost the rest, and we played 6 games in playoffs against them, and then 1-10, right? So, or 1-9.
So it was not
so
great.
we should so we want to improve on that. We want to go 10-0.
Yeah.
We hope
good.
we think they're going to be good, but we want us to be better.
Okay.
So.
Let's find out things. If you have anything you want to say to any of the Clutch fans out there, or the LCS fans that are looking this year to sort of see what you guys can accomplish, you want to close us out here?
Yeah, sure. If you guys have any questions or ideas or things I should be telling Travis, please let me know. I will be more than happy to talk about it. There really aren't any topics I'm like not comfortable talking about. Like, Travis can literally ask me anything right now and I'll answer it.
Well, I think we're out of time for questions, unfortunately. But
thank God.
People can tweet at you, I'm sure, and ask you questions, or maybe the main Clutch account. Thank you so much for coming into the studio today to talk to me. Really appreciate catching up with you.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things esports over on my YouTube channel. As I sit here next to a plushie for a creature that doesn't exist and only exists on the ARAM map, and also Nexus Blitz now, I'm thinking about how much content there's coming to this channel in just a little bit. Actually, it's already hitting. Preseason is here. You got these interviews. You've got player interviews. I've got my award show. We've got Hotline League backup. There's so much stuff happening. And by the way, ton of it, basically all of it, sponsored by Alienware. Thank you so much to Alienware. You can check out their link in the description to go check out some of the cool stuff. They announced a whole bunch of cool stuff during CES. They make so much of this stuff possible. And I also want to thank you guys for watching all of it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, because it's how I evaluate my self-worth. And whenever that number is not high enough, I go into a deep depression. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.